One of the key principles of being a master at relationships, and this is relationships of all kinds, it's just amplified through romantic relationship, is this ability to navigate ruptures, like disruptions in our relationships, and repair those ruptures. This is not something we're generally taught in childhood. And that's because, maybe, for example, our families never fought in front of us, our parents never did, or they fought in front of us, but we never saw the repair. Often the repair happens behind closed doors, or it never happens. I've worked with someone who's like, my childhood was incredible. There was never conflict. And that's the story I used to say. So instantly I was like, okay, let's let that sit there. But when we dove deeper into his relationship patterns, he saw that he was extremely conflict avoidant because ultimately the message he was taught as a kid was only good things. Right? Like only good vibes only. There's shirts made about that. And so he was able to recognize that he was avoiding all types of conflict because one, his family system taught him that, and he didn't know how to navigate conflict. He thought that conflict was disruptive to relationships, which it can be, of course. But really successful couples, it's not that they don't have conflict, it's how they navigate conflict that's different. In the book Liberated Love that Kylie, my wife, and I co-authored, which is available for pre-order now, we talk about how to create that type of dynamic, how to look at what things shaped you relationally so that you have the pattern that you have. Because one of the greatest complaints I hear from couples and that we hear together is that, hey, we keep having the same conversations over and over again. We can't seem to navigate conflict and get past this thing. Fighting about the same things is about living the same patterns, right? If we want to change our patterns, we have to change our choices. But there's things that live below the pattern, and there's hurts and wounds that live there that the relationship can actually help heal. Now, I remember it's Harville Hendrix and Helen Hunt who wrote the book Getting the Love You Want, where they talk about 90% of the conflicts we have are not about the thing, they're about old things. And a lot of the times they're not even about something that happened in our relationship. They're about a previous relationship or even our childhood. Isn't it wild that we choose to be in a relationship with people who trigger us in the exact way that is most triggering? That doesn't seem like a gift, of course, but it is. We're unconsciously drawn to people that bring up the things that are unresolved, usually in our family system and usually in our family tree. So what a gift that is, that we get to be the ones that through relationship, it brings up this material that we get to work with. And look, you can either look at the material and change your life, which will change every area of your life, or you can continue to avoid it and live those patterns out. New person, new experience, same pattern. So I want to read an excerpt from the book because I think it's such a powerful representation of how to shift this and some awarenesses about ruptures. So ruptures occur when there is a breakdown in our connection with another. Rupture can happen when we're in conflict, navigating a disagreement and or experiencing harm from one another. Not only are ruptures inevitable, but they are also to be expected. How well we repair after a rupture determines the health, safety, and depth of a relationship. Now, things that don't get resolved end up lingering. We all know that. And everything unsaid gets said, but rather than verbally, it is through the way we treat one another. The more undealt with and unaddressed stuff that lives in the space between you and another, the less safety and intimacy you will experience in that relationship. This is why Kylie and I practice and preach the concept of a low negativity threshold in our relationships. When we have a low negativity threshold, we don't allow negativity to exist for long periods of time or for it to build up in our relationships before addressing it and sweeping it under the carpet, because that's just not how we roll. And I used to roll that way, and it didn't work out very well. So it's a good change. If you're someone who avoids that and sweeps it, you're going to trip on it eventually. So what we don't address keeps addressing us, whether we like it or not. When we live and love at this level of emotional maturity and self-integrity, it requires that we become skilled at looking in the mirror, owning our side of the street and taking accountability for what is ours and nothing more. When we have the relational skills to repair, it becomes easier to maintain a low negativity threshold in our relationships. For many of us, the process of repair was not modeled well, if at all. One of the main reasons for this is shame. When the internal ground we stand on is polluted with shame, it is challenging to take ownership and apologize. To prevent the collapse of self or an unwanted confrontation with shame, we deny, project, and blame instead. This is why most ruptures never get resolved. This is why most ruptures lead to even more disconnection instead of deeper connections. When you reflect on your ability to repair, what comes up for you? How did your primary caregivers, your parents, model repair? What prevents you from repairing with others? Listen, I get it. It's a lot easier to protect an old identity and story than it is to lean into repair, eat that giant piece of humble pie, and trust that something else is available to us on the other side. Being the first to practice and model repair in a relationship, whether it's fresh or a lifelong one, takes immense courage. It takes courage to be vulnerable and say, hey, when you said that yesterday, it really hurt my feelings. It takes courage to say, hey, I'm sorry for what I said to you yesterday that wasn't kind or okay, and I'm committed to doing better. Or, I wasn't kind in that moment, and I should have taken a step back. One of my favorite quotes from John Gottman is about what differentiates relationship masters from what he calls the disasters. That there's a shared agreement that says, baby, when you're hurt, the world stops and I listen, and I try to understand and empathize. I'm not going to leave you in pain. I'm there for you. It makes me emotional to even think about, because that level of like, I'm not going to let you suffer. If you're in pain, the world stops and I listen. Imagine if we cultivated that type of agreement in the relationships we have in our life. Consistent repair puts deposits in the emotional bank account. It fosters trust and safety. True repair is more than saying, I'm sorry. It's about acknowledging what happened, taking responsibility for our role, and acknowledging the impact we had on another. It's also about hearing our partner's version of what happened and getting curious about how we contributed and co-created the dynamic. It's also about being proactive, setting necessary boundaries and creating a plan to reestablish connection, safety, and care in the relationship moving forward. This is what it means to adult. And don't get me wrong, this is a place we all want to aspire to, and this is a place that I'm constantly working at creating, because there's always more to learn. Liberated love, which is the concept that we focus on in the book, the principles and how to do that. It begins to enter our domain when we make repair and reconnection more important than ego and being right. Choosing to repair is choosing to let love in again. It's choosing to see the humanity in another and offer grace when we trip and mess up. When we let love lead over shame, retaliation, and punishment, we both win. Relationships become rock solid when we cultivate a culture where we come back again and again and take turns being the first to say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I am committed to being better. You matter to me. It hurts to see you suffer. I love you. That's an excerpt and a concept that we dive much deeper into in our book, Liberated Love, which is available for pre-order now. So if you love this juiciness, make sure you go order it now. createthelove.com/liberatedlove, or wherever you get your books. If you go to that link, you can submit your order number and you'll get a free copy of a meditation and a workbook we created to go along with it. Also, make sure you hit subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to it so that you don't miss all the upcoming episodes that are about liberating your life, because I've got so many amazing ones coming out that are going to teach you more about human relating and how to liberate yourself in any and every area of your life.